There are moments when life becomes so heavy, so quiet, that you start to wonder if God still sees you. You pray, but nothing changes. You wait, but nothing moves. You hope, but everything feels the same. And deep inside, a question begins to whisper, have I been forgotten? If you've ever felt that way, you're not alone. Many people carry that silent pain, smiling on the outside, but questioning on the inside, wondering why their prayers feel unanswered, wondering why their prayers feel delayed, why their breakthrough feels delayed, why their season feels so long. But what if the silence you're experiencing is not abandonment, but preparation? What if God hasn't forgotten you, but is actually working in ways you cannot yet see? Because sometimes the hardest seasons are the ones where God is doing His deepest work. So take a moment and be honest with yourself. Have you ever felt like God has forgotten you during a difficult time? During a difficult time? Share your experience in the comments. Your story could be the encouragement someone else needs to keep holding on. There are moments in life when silence feels louder than any noise. When silence feels louder than any noise. Moments when you pray, but nothing seems to change. When you wait, but nothing seems to change. When you wait, but nothing seems to move. When you hope, but everything around you feels uncertain. And in those moments, a quiet question begins to rise in your heart. Has God forgotten me? It is not always spoken out loud, but it lingers in your thoughts. Because when life becomes difficult, when doors remain closed, when answers feel delayed, it is easy to feel overlooked. It is easy to feel like your situation has been ignored, like your prayers have gone unheard, like your pain has gone unseen. But you must understand this truth with clarity. God has not forgotten you, not for a moment, not for a second, not in any part of your journey. Isaiah 49:15 says, can a mother forget the baby at her breast and have no compassion on the child she has born? Though she may forget, I will not forget you. That is not just a comforting statement. That is a declaration of God's nature. Because even in the most unlikely scenario, where human love fails, God's remembrance does not. He does not lose track of your life. He does not overlook your struggles. He does not ignore your prayers. Even when you cannot see His hand, His presence is still there, working, moving, aligning things in ways you may not yet understand. But the challenge is this: when you cannot see movement, your emotions begin to interpret silence as absence. And that is where faith is tested, because faith is not believing when everything is visible. Faith is trusting when nothing makes sense. Hebrews 11:1 says, now faith is confidence in what we hope for, an assurance about what we do not see. Notice that assurance about what you do not see. Notice that assurance about what you do not see. That means your confidence is not built on visible evidence. It is built on trust in God's character, and His character is faithful, consistent, unchanging. Even when your situation feels unstable, there are seasons in life where God allows you to walk through difficulty, not because He has forgotten you, but because He has forming something within you, something deeper than comfort, something stronger than temporary relief. Romans 5:4 says, we also glory in our sufferings, because we know that suffering produces perseverance, perseverance, character, and character, hope. That process is not easy. It is not comfortable, but it is purposeful. Because God is not only concerned with where you are going, He is concerned with who you are becoming. And sometimes the greatest growth happens in the most difficult seasons. Joseph experienced this in Genesis. He had a dream from God, a promise, a vision of his future. But before that promise was fulfilled, he went through betrayal, rejection, and imprisonment. And in those moments, it could have easily felt like God had forgotten him, like the dream no longer mattered, like the promise had been abandoned. But the truth was, God was still working. Even in the pit, even in the prison, God was positioning him, preparing him, aligning circumstances that would eventually lead him to the palace. And the same God who worked in Joseph's life is working in yours, even when you cannot see it, even when it feels delayed, even when it feels delayed. Because delay is not denial. Just because something has not happened yet does not mean it will not happen. It simply means the timing is not yet complete. Ecclesiastes 3:11 says, He has made everything beautiful in its time. Not your time, His time. And trusting His timing is one of the hardest parts of faith, because you want answers now. You want change now. You want change now. You want clarity now. But God sees beyond the present moment. He sees the full picture. He understands what needs to happen before what you are praying for can be fulfilled. And sometimes the waiting is part of the preparation, can be fulfilled. And sometimes the waiting is part of the preparation. Because if God gave you everything immediately, you might not be ready to handle it. You might not have the strength to sustain it. You might not have the wisdom to manage it. So He prepares you in the waiting. He strengthens you in the delay. He builds your faith in the silence. And that preparation is not wasted. Even when it feels like nothing is happening, something is being developed within you. Strength, patience, trust, resilience, qualities that cannot be formed in comfort. They are formed in challenge, in uncertainty, in moments where you have no choice but to depend on God. And dependence is not weakness. It is alignment. Shemis, it is alignment. It is recognizing that your life is not meant to be controlled by your own understanding, but guided by God's wisdom. Proverbs 3:5 says, Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding, because your understanding is limited. It sees the present, but God sees the future. It reacts to circumstances, but God sees the future. It reacts to circumstances, but God works through them. And when you rely only on what you see, you will often feel discouraged, because circumstances change. They fluctuate. They do not always reflect what God is doing behind the scenes. But when you trust God, you move beyond what you see. You anchor yourself in what you know, that He is faithful, that He is present, that He is present, that He has not forgotten you. Even when it feels like He is silent, because silence does not mean absence. Sometimes silence is where God does His deepest work, not externally but internally, shaping your heart, adjusting your perspective, strengthening your faith. Strengthening your faith. Because if God spoke constantly, you might become dependent on His voice instead of trusting His presence. But when He is silent, you learn to trust without constant reassurance. You learn to believe without immediate confirmation. And that kind of faith is powerful, because it is not fragile. It is not dependent on feelings. It is anchored in truth. Psalm 139, 1-2 says, You have searched me, Lord, and you know me. You perceive my thoughts from afar. God knows you completely, fully, intimately. There is nothing about your life that is hidden from Him. Not your struggles, not your fears, not your disappointments, not your silent prayers. He sees it all. And not only does He see it, He cares. 1 Peter 5:7 says, Cast all your anxiety on Him because He cares for you. That means you do not have to carry everything alone. You do not have to hold in your pain. You do not have to hold in your pain. You do not have to pretend to be strong when you feel weak. You can bring it to God honestly, openly, without fear, because He is not distant. He is near, closer than you realize, even in your lowest moments, even in your darkest seasons, even when everything feels uncertain. God is there, working, sustaining, holding you together when you feel like falling apart. And sometimes His work is not about changing your situation immediately. Sometimes it is about sustaining you through it, giving you the strength to endure, the peace to remain steady, the faith to keep going. Because not every storm is removed immediately. Some storms are meant to be walked through, but you do not walk through them alone. Isaiah 43:2 says, When you pass through the waters, I will be with you. When you walk through the fire, you will not be burned. Notice it says when, not if, because difficulty is part of life, but so is God's presence. And His presence makes the difference, because when God is with you, what should have destroyed you becomes something that develops you. Because when God is with you, what should have destroyed you becomes something that develops you. What should have broken you becomes something that strengthens you. What should have ended you becomes something that elevates you. And that is why you must hold on, even when it is hard, even when it is hard, even when it feels like nothing is changing, even when you do not understand, because God has not forgotten you. There is still purpose in where you are right now, even if it does not feel like it, even if it does not feel like it, even if nothing around you seems to reflect progress, even if every day feels the same. Purpose is not always loud. It is not always visible. Sometimes it is quiet, hidden beneath the surface, working in ways you cannot measure. Because God does not weigh seasons. He does not allow pain without purpose. He does not allow delay without design. Everything you are going through is being used, shaped, and positioned for something greater than what you can currently see. But the difficulty is this: when you're in the middle of it, you often focus on what is missing instead of what is being formed. You focus on what has not happened yet instead of what is being formed. You focus on what has not happened yet instead of what is developing within you. You measure your life by visible results, but God is working on internal transformation. And that transformation matters. Transformation matters because who you become will determine how you handle what is coming. If God answered every prayer immediately without preparing your heart, you might not sustain the blessing. You might mishandle the opportunity. You might lose what you prayed for. So instead, He prepares you. He strengthens your character. He deepens your faith. He builds your endurance. And that process requires time. It requires trust. It requires patience. Psalm 27:14 says, "Wait for the Lord, be strong and take heart and wait for the Lord." Waiting is not passive. It is active trust. It is choosing to believe even when you do not see results. It is holding on to faith even when emotions try to pull you away. It is remaining steady when everything around you feels uncertain. And that kind of waiting produces strength, not weakness. Strength, because you are learning to rely on God instead of circumstances. You are learning to anchor your hope in Him instead of outcomes. And that anchor keeps you steady, because life will change, situations will shift, people may come and go, but God remains constant. And when your faith is rooted in Him, you are not easily shaken. Being in a difficult season can also reveal what you truly believe, because it is easy to say you trust God when everything is going well. When prayers are being answered quickly, when life feels smooth, but true faith is revealed in difficulty, in moments when you do not understand, in seasons where you feel stretched, in situations where you have no control. And in those moments, your faith becomes real. Not just words, not just belief, but lived experience, because you are choosing to trust God even when it is hard. And that kind of faith draws you closer to Him. It deepens your relationship. It moves you from knowing about God to truly knowing Him, because you begin to experience His faithfulness in real ways. Not just in theory, but in practice. You begin to see how He sustains you, how He comforts you, how He strengthens you when you feel like you cannot continue. And those experiences build confidence, not in yourself, but in Him. That in Him, Lamentations 3:22-23 says, "Because of the Lord's great love, we are not consumed, for His compasses never fail. They are new every morning, new every morning." That means every day God is providing what you need, even if it is just enough for that day. Even if it is just enough strength to get through the moment, it is still provision. It is still evidence that He has not forgotten you. Because if He had, you would not be sustained. You would not still be standing. You would not still be standing. You would not still have the ability to move forward. But you are here, you are still going. And that in itself is proof of His presence. Even when you do not feel it, even when you do not see it, even when you do not see it, God is sustaining you. Sometimes we expect God to show up in big, obvious ways, to change everything instantly, to remove every struggle. But often He works in quieter ways, through strength you did not know you had, through peace that does not make sense, through small progress that builds over time. And if you are not paying attention, you may overlook those things. You may think nothing is happening. But in reality, God is working in subtle, consistent ways ways that do not always attract attention but create lasting impact, because real growth is often quiet. It happens beneath the surface, in your thoughts, in your attitude, in your perspective. And over time, that growth becomes visible in how you respond, in how you think, in how you handle situations that once overwhelmed you. And that change is powerful because it shows that even in difficulty, God is transforming you. He is shaping you into someone stronger, someone wiser, someone more grounded in faith. And that transformation is part of His plan, not just to get you through the situation, but to prepare you for what is ahead. Because what is ahead will require strength. It will require faith. It will require a deeper understanding of who God is. And your current season is building that foundation. So instead of seeing this season as a place of abandonment, begin to see it as a place of abandonment. Begin to see it as a place of preparation. Instead of asking, why is this happening to me? Begin to ask, what is God developing in me? Begin to ask, what is God developing in me? Because that shift in perspective changes how you experience the season. It moves you from frustration to growth, from confusion to purpose, from feeling forgotten to recognizing that you are being formed. And formation takes time. It is not instant. It is not always comfortable, but it is necessary, because God is not just preparing a blessing for you. He is preparing you for the blessing. And that preparation is an act of love, because He wants you to be ready. He wants you to be able to handle what He has planned. He wants you to walk into your future with strength and confidence, not fragile, not unprepared, but ready. So even when it feels like nothing is happening, trust that something is being formed. Even when it feels like God is silent, trust that He is still present. Even when it feels like you have been forgotten, hold on to the truth that you have not, because God does not forget His promises. Numbers 23:19 says, God is not human, that He should lie. Does He speak and then not act? Does He promise and not fulfill? If He said it, He will do it. If He promised it, it will come to pass, but it will happen in His time. But it will come to pass. But it will come to casa. It will come to casa. But it will come to casa. But it will come to casa. But it will come to casa. It will come to casa, but it will happen in His time, in His way, according to His plan. And your role is to trust, to remain faithful, to keep moving forward even when it is difficult, because your story is not over. Your situation is not the end. It is part of a process that is leading somewhere, a process that is shaping something, a process that is preparing you for what is next. And as you continue to walk through it, holding on to faith, holding on to hope, holding on to God, you will begin to see step by step that He was with you all along. And when you finally begin to see that He was with you all along, something inside you settles in a well. Something inside you settles in a W. I that nothing else could ever accomplish. Because you realize that what felt like abandonment was actually protection. What felt like delay was actually preparation. What felt like silence was actually God working in ways too deep for you to understand at the time. And that realization changes how you interpret your entire journey. You stop seeing your past as a series of unanswered prayers and start seeing it as a path of divine guidance. You begin to connect moments that once felt random, situations that once felt painful, delays that once felt frustrating. And you see how they all played a role in shaping who you are today. Because God does not just work in the moments you celebrate. He works in the moments you struggle to understand. In the nights you cried without words. In the days you felt like giving up. In the silent prayers that no one else heard. He was there, listening, holding you together. Chose to say, listening, holding you together, giving you just enough strength to keep going, even when you did not realize it. Psalm 34:18 says, the Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. Close, not distant, not unaware. Close. That means in your lowest moments, God is not far away. He is near. closer than you think, closer than your feelings may suggest. Because feelings can be misleading. They can make you believe that you are alone, that you have been forgotten, that nothing is changing. But truth is not determined by feeling. Truth is determined by who God is. And He is faithful, always. Even when you cannot feel it, even when you cannot see it, even when nothing around you reflects it. And learning to hold on to that truth is what strengthens your faith. Because your faith is not built on emotional consistency. It is built on God's unchanging nature, and His nature is dependable, reliable, trustworthy, even in the most unsun, rain circumstances. There are times when life will test your belief, when everything around you will seem to contradict what you are hoping for, when the situation will look worse before it gets better. And in those moments, you have to make a decision. Will you trust what you see, or will you trust what God has said? Because those two things do not always align immediately. What you see may look like defeat, but what God has said speaks of victory. What you see may look like delay, but what God has said promises fulfillment. What you see may look like an ending, but what God has said declares a new beginning. But what God has said declares a new beginning. And faith is choosing to stand on what God has said, even when what you see does not yet match it. 2 Corinthians 4:18 says, "So we fix our eyes not on what is seen, but on what is unseen." But on what is unseen. Because what is seen is temporary, but what is unseen is temporary. But what is unseen is eternal. Temporary situations can change, but God's promises remain. And when you hold on to those promises, you anchor yourself in something that cannot be shaken. Even when life feels unstable, even when circumstances shift, even when everything feels uncertain, because your foundation is not in what is happening around you. It is in who God is. And that foundation gives you strength to endure, strength to continue, strength to believe, even when it is difficult, even when it requires everything within you to keep holding on. But understand this, your persistence matters. Your decision to keep trusting matters. Your choice to keep believing, even when it is hard, matters. Because every moment you choose faith over fear, you are strengthening your relationship with God. You are building a deeper trust, a stronger connection, a more resilient spirit. And that resilience will carry you through future challenges. Because this will not be the last time your faith is tested. Life will continue to present moments that require trust, moments that require patience, moments that require you to lean on God in ways you never have before. And each time your faith will grow, your understanding will deepen, your confidence in God will become stronger. In God will become stronger because you have seen His faithfulness before. You have experienced His presence in past situations. You have witnessed how He brought you through what once felt impossible. And those experiences become your reference point. They remind you that if God did it before, He can do it again. If He brought you through one season, He can bring you through another. If He sustained you once, He will sustain you again because He does not change. Malachi 3:6 says, "I, the Lord, do not change." And that consistency is your assurance. Because no matter And that consistency is your assurance. Because no matter what changes in your life, God remains the same. His love remains the same. His faithfulness remains the same. His faithfulness remains the same. His promises remain the same. And that means you can trust Him fully, completely, without hesitation, even when you do not understand, even when the process is uncomfortable, even when the process is uncomfortable, even when the outcome is not yet visible. Because trusting God is not about having all the answers. It is about believing that the one who has the answers is leading you. And that belief gives you peace, not because everything is resolved, but because you know you are not alone. You are not forgotten. You are not abandoned. You are not abandoned. You are seen. You are known. You are cared for. And you are being guided even in ways you cannot yet recognize. So keep going. Keep trusting. Keep believing. Even when it feels difficult. even when it feels like nothing is changing. Behind, and it's see, because behind the scenes, beyond what you can see, God is still working, still aligning, still preparing something that will one day make sense of everything you have been through. And that closeness, that deeper connection with God becomes something you would not trade for anything. Because you begin to realize that while you were asking for change, God was offering you Himself. While you were asking for answers, He was building relationship. While you were asking for answers, He was building relationship. While you were asking for the situation to be removed, He was strengthening you within it. And that kind of relationship is what carries you, not just through one difficult season, but through every season that follows. Because life will always have challenges. There will always be moments that test you, stretch you, and push you beyond your comfort. But when you have learned to walk closely with God, those moments no longer define you. They refine you. They become opportunities for growth. Opportunities to growth. Opportunities to, trust deeper. Opportunities to see God move in ways you may not have recognized before, because now your perspective has changed. You no longer see difficulty as a sign that God has left you. You begin to see it as a place where God is working in you, developing something that cannot be formed any other way. Developing something that cannot be formed any other way. James 1:4 says, "Consider it pure joy whenever you face trials, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance." That is not an easy mindset. It requires maturity. It requires understanding. But when you begin to see your trials through that lens, you stop resisting every difficult moment. Instead, you begin to ask, what is God teaching me here? What is He strengthening in me? What is He preparing me for? And those questions shift your focus from frustration to growth, from pain to purpose, from confusion to clarity, from pain to purpose, from confusion to clarity. Because now you are not just trying to escape the situation. You are trying to understand it. You are allowing it to shape you, to draw you closer to God. And that closeness becomes your greatest strength. Because when you know God, not just in theory, but through experience, your faith becomes unshakable. You've seen Him sustain you. You have felt His peace in moments that did not make sense. You have experienced His presence when you thought you were alone. And those experiences become evidence. Evidence that He is with you. Evidence that He has not forgotten you. Evidence that He has not forgotten you. Evidence that no matter what you face, you are not walking through it alone. So even when new challenges arise, you approach them differently. Not with fear, but with faith. Not with panic, but with trust. Because you remember what God has already done. You remember how He brought you through before. And that memory strengthens your belief that He will do it again. Because His faithfulness is not limited to one season. It is consistent, unchanging, reliable. And that reliability gives you confidence, not in your situation, but in your God. And that confidence allows you to keep moving forward, even when the path is unclear, even when the outcome is unknown. Because you are no longer walking based on what you see. You are walking based on what you see. You are walking based on what you know. That God has not forgotten you. And He never will. And so as you stand in whatever season you are in right now, whether it is filled with questions, delays, pain, or uncertainty, hold on to this truth with everything in you. God has not forgotten you. Not in your waiting, not in your struggle, not in your silent prayers. He sees you. He knows you. He understands every detail of your life. He sees you. He knows you. He understands every detail of your life. Fee, even the parts you cannot explain to anyone else. And even when it feels like nothing is happening, He is still working, aligning, preparing, strengthening, and guiding you in ways you may not yet understand. You may not see it now. You may not feel it now. But one day you will look back and realize that He was there in every moment, carrying you when you were weak, leading you when you were weak, leading you when you were unsure, and protecting you in ways you never even recognized. So do not lose heart. Do not let doubt convince you that you have been forgotten. Do not allow delay to make you believe that God has denied you. Instead, choose to trust Him. Choose to believe that His timing is perfect. Choose to hold on to faith, even when it is difficult. Because your story is not over. Your situation is not over. Your situation is not final. And your current season is not your destination. God is still writing your story, still working behind the scenes, still preparing something that will one day make sense of everything you have been through. And when that moment comes, you will not just see His hand, you will understand His heart. And you will know, without a doubt, that He never forgot you, not even for a second.